The usher leaned in close, voice low like he was sharing a secret I hadn't asked for. "You're back there," he said, nodding toward the far end of the venue. "Near the exit." I looked at him. Then I looked at the rows of white chairs lined with flowers and ribbon, all the way up front where my family sat laughing, adjusting their fascinators, not once turning around to look for me. Behind me, I heard my aunt tell someone, "We didn't want any distractions up front." Heads turned. Guests in their seats shifted to look at me standing there in the aisle, holding my small clutch bag, wearing the dress I'd spent 3 weeks saving up for. I didn't move. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't going to just quietly sit down and disappear. "My name is Brianna Cole. I'm 36 years old, and I want to be honest with you from the start. I don't have a dramatic job title. I'm not the one who shows up to family events in a new car or drops the name of some fancy neighborhood when people ask where I live. I work steady hours at a logistics company, I pay my bills on time, and I show up when it matters. That's always been my role in this family. The one who shows up. The one who helps carry boxes before a move, who sits with sick relatives when no one else has time, who quietly puts money in the envelope even when my own account is running low. I'm not asking for applause. I never did. But what I did expect, somewhere deep down, was to at least be seen. To be treated like I belonged. That expectation cost me more heartache than I care to count. I wasn't rich or glamorous. But I had something they didn't expect. If you've ever felt like the invisible one at your own family table, the one people call when they need something but overlook when it's time to celebrate, then this space is for you. I see you. Subscribe if you've ever shown up for people who forgot to show up for you. Have you ever been pushed to the background at a moment that should have felt like home? Drop it in the comments. And click hype so we can keep going together. It started weeks before the wedding. My cousin Denise was getting married, and the planning was everywhere. Group chats were made. Voice notes were flying. Aunts were posting venue photos. I found out about all of it secondhand, from a neighbor who assumed I already knew. I wasn't in any of the chats. I told myself it was an oversight. I even reached out to Denise directly and offered to help with whatever she needed. She said, "I'll let you know," and then didn't. I arrived at the venue early on the wedding day, genuinely hoping that being there, being present, would smooth things over the way it usually did. That's when the usher found me. When he walked me to the back row, I saw the seat clearly labeled. My name on a small card, tucked against the wall nearest the side exit. And then my Aunt Renata turned around from her front row seat, looked directly at me, and said loud enough for the row beside her to hear, "She doesn't really fit the front row image, does she?" People heard. Heads turned. Whispers started moving like a current. And then Denise, my cousin, the bride, glanced back down the aisle and simply nodded. Like it had already been decided. Like I wasn't worth the conversation. What came next wasn't one moment. It was 3, and each one landed harder than the last. First, I found out the family had been telling people I was unstable. Not dramatic, not difficult. Unstable. Like there was something wrong with me that explained why I was never fully included. I heard it from a cousin who thought I already knew. The word sat in my chest like a stone. Second, I learned that the money I had quietly contributed toward the wedding venue deposit had never been mentioned. Not in the planning meetings. Not in the thank you speeches. Not once. My name wasn't attached to any of it. Someone else got the credit, someone who had given less and made sure everyone knew about it. Third, when I sat in that back row with tears I was doing everything to hold in, a family member came over and whispered that I was making a scene. I hadn't said a single word. But my face, apparently, was the problem. That was the moment something shifted in me. I stopped feeling like I needed to apologize for hurting. And I started paying very close attention, Here is what my family never considered. I don't delete messages. Not texts. Not emails. Not voicemails. I never made a decision to start saving them. It was just something I did, the way some people keep old receipts in a drawer, not sure if they'll ever need them but unwilling to throw them away. Over the years, there were messages asking me to cover for people, messages where family members said one thing to my face and something completely different to each other, voicemails asking for money with promises attached that were never kept. I had years of it. Quietly stored. And I hadn't shown anyone because I was never trying to burn anything down. I was protecting myself. Just in case the day came when my word wasn't going to be enough. I never thought that day would be a wedding. But life doesn't ask for your preferences when it decides to move. There was one person outside of all this who knew more than he let on. His name was Gerald Payne, a family lawyer who had helped my grandmother with her estate years ago. Gerald was quiet and careful, the kind of man who listened more than he spoke. After the wedding, he reached out to me privately. He said he'd been noticing things for a while, inconsistencies in how the family handled shared finances, how decisions were made, and whose interests were actually being protected. When I told him what I had saved, the messages, the voicemails, the emails, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Brianna, that changes things." He told me to be patient. The family was celebrating. They had no idea anything was coming. They were laughing at brunches, posting photos, talking about how smoothly everything had gone. And I sat with what Gerald told me, quietly, and I waited. The reception was still going when Gerald arrived. I watched him from across the room, calm and measured in a dark suit, speaking briefly with the venue coordinator. When he stood and politely asked for a moment of the room's attention, the music stopped. People assumed it was a toast. A few raised their glasses. Gerald thanked everyone warmly, and then he began. He read from the messages slowly and clearly. He read the ones where family members asked me to cover expenses they later denied. He read the voicemail where my aunt asked me to stay out of the planning because, in her words, I would complicate the image they were building. He read the email thread where Denise agreed I should be seated in the back, weeks before I ever arrived at that venue. The room went still. The kind of still where you can hear the ice melting in someone's glass. Guests looked at each other. Denise's new husband looked at Denise. My Aunt Renata stared at the tablecloth like she was hoping it would open up and pull her in. Everything they had built their version of events on was sitting in that room, out loud, where it couldn't be softened or reframed. My seating assignment wasn't carelessness. It was a choice. And everyone now understood exactly what kind of choice it was. I didn't stay for the reaction. I picked up my bag, straightened my dress, and I walked out. Not because I was running from something. Because I had already done what needed to be done simply by telling the truth and letting it stand on its own. Outside, the evening air was cool and the sound of the reception faded behind me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. Clean. Like something heavy had been set down. My family would spend the next days and weeks dealing with what had been exposed. Some would reach out. Some would deflect. Some would simply pretend it hadn't happened. I wasn't waiting for any of them. I had spent so many years hoping to be seen by people who had already decided how to see me. And the thing about dignity is that no one can hand it to you. You have to decide, at some point, to stop waiting for permission to have it. I walked to my car. I drove home. And I did not look back. If you've ever been publicly embarrassed by people who were supposed to be your people, I want you to know you are not alone. Drop your story in the comments. You don't have to carry it by yourself. Subscribe to this community because what we build here is for people who understand this kind of pain and refuse to let it be the ending. Your experience is valid. Your strength is real. Click hype to help this story reach someone out there who needs to hear it tonight. Thank you for being here. Genuinely. If this story connected with something in you, subscribe and share your own journey in the comments below. Every single hype click helps this reach someone else who's been made to feel small by the people who should have lifted them up. You are not forgotten here. You never were.